The Dharma, incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with even in hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept and hold it. May we realize the true mind, the Tathagata, which of course is our very own mind, the mind of all beings. Today is the fourth day of this second in a row 7-day sesshin here in New Mexico, up in the northern mountains in Ojosarco at Mountain Gate. And it is April 14th, 2022. I'd like to share with you today a wonderful, wonderful poem by the 13th century Sufi master Rumi, Jalāl Rumi. Rumi just means he came from Rum, which is a part of the Roman Empire in Asia. He was born in a time when there was tremendous strife, as not so different in certain ways from our current era, particularly nowadays, although possibly not as intense and possibly more intense. In his era, the Crusades were marching from Europe into the Middle East and wreaking havoc along the way. There are stories in Turkey of Turkish mothers killing their children and themselves to avoid being raped and murdered by the Crusaders, who were supposedly moving to save souls. This has always been an excuse for not the best of behavior, and at certain circles it was an honest, earnest, supposedly devout concern that people who were not of the religion of the those in control would go to hell unless they converted. And so it was the duty of those who were part of the mainstream religion, whatever it was, to convert those so they wouldn't go to hell. And unfortunately, they created a hell often in their attempts to convert. And New Mexico is still reeling in a way from that. But Rumi was born in the same, more or less, time frame as St. Francis of Assisi and Meister Eckhart. He was born between the two, but it was also a time, besides the Crusades heading into the Middle East, there was also the Mongols who were heading from the east into the west and causing equal problems. Rumi was born in Balkh, which was at the time in Afghanistan. I don't know what it's called now, or maybe it is still called Balkh. At any rate, as the Mongols were approaching, his father led his family and his followers out of that area, which was the edge of Persia, or I should say the edge of the Persian Empire, and ended up in a part of Turkey where the city of Konya is. And in fact, you can go to Konya and see the caskets of Rumi and his sons. There is I don't know what you would call it, because it's all, there's a building in which those caskets are. They're not buried, they're just sitting on the ground. These very interestingly shaped caskets. And Rumi, when I was in architecture school in Turkey, there was a memorial service, a major memorial event of Rumi's life. And I was trying to figure out what it was, the 775th or 700 something anniversary of his death, I think it was. And there were going to be services in Konya, and my classmates were organizing buses to go to be part of the celebration, where there would be a public turning of the whirling dervishes, which is their spiritual practices, to do the turning, as they call it. It's not, well, now I think it is done more publicly in Turkey, but at the time when I was living there, it was quite underground, and you simply did not know who the dervishes were, and their services were not public at the time. But I was not able to go because I had a family, and I also had an architecture project due on Monday, so I was not part of that. Eventually, later, perhaps a year later, I actually did get to visit Konya. That's how come I know about the site of, I can't call it burial because he wasn't buried, but at any rate, the tombs of Rumi and his sons. His father was al-Dīn and was the head of a spiritual, I think you call it a spiritual group, but they were also, they had widespread work. And he was, the whole family had been for generations doing that work. And when Rumi was in his 20s, his father died and left him in charge of, as the head of the school. There's a lot about Rumi's life that is mysterious and fascinating, and I won't get into that. But I will say this. I want to quote from this book by Coleman Barks, who is a long-time translator of Rumi and has a very interesting connection with it that I won't get into either. But here he says, the work of the dervish community, and that was his father's community and his community, was to open the heart, to explore the mystery of union, to fiercely search for and try to say truth, and to celebrate the glory and the difficulties of being in a human body. To these ends, they use silence and song, poetry, meditation, stories, discourse, and jokes. They fasted and feasted. They walked together and watched the animals. Animal behavior was a kind of a scripture that they studied. They cooked and they worked in the garden. They tended orchards and the vineyards. And all along the way, they were searching, as we search as well, for essentially the same thing, except it's not a thing. And there's no real writing that can explain or describe what we are all in this universe, in this life, searching for, even people who don't even know they're searching. It's all beyond words. It cannot be found with words. But sometimes words can point the way. The infamous finger pointing at the moon cannot bring the moon to you. It's already there. But and it cannot do anything beyond sort of an attempt to describe what can be reached as represented by the moon, but it can inspire. And inspiration is often what is required for this deep search, because the search is challenging. Sometimes it seems to be going well. Sometimes it seems to be that we're so far from it that we may as well give up and as Hakuin decided one point in his life, try a different way to make a living. It was when he left practice and became a calligraphy student. That ended rather fast. I think he was only doing that for 8 months, but eventually came back to the practice, because when we connect with this yearning, and Rumi speaks of this yearning also, then we can't let it go. It may go underground. It may go, we may be discouraged and abandon it, supposedly. But I remember when I was living and training at the Rochester Zen Center, that people would come, do practice, sometimes pretty serious practice, many sesshin, for 2, 3, 4 years, 5 years maybe, and then they disappear. You wouldn't hear from them again. But 10 years later, 15 years later, they would return, this time with a deepened level of commitment and determination and breakthrough. Once we are on this path to awakening, it's pretty difficult to get off it. It's so important. This is why we were born, to awaken to this unnameable that we are, and to live that clarity and that wisdom and that compassion in the rest of our lives. Whether we are in robes in some spiritual group, or whether we are living a life out and about with a profession. It can be cooking in a soup kitchen. It can be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. But the heart is captured and awakened by this yearning. And this is brought forth in the poetry of Rumi and of the other Sufi poets. Sufism is, as is the mystic focus, if you want to call it that, of the Islamic religion. Just as the Christian mystics are the focus of the mystical aspect of Christianity. Zen seems to have mysticism built in, but it doesn't matter. You don't need to name it at all. Just open to this yearning. Just open to this yearning and let it carry you deep within, beyond words, because that's when you will find what you're yearning for. So this is a very long, or well, not so very long, but this is a long poem by Rumi. And I had only known the first couple of verses before, and thanks to a student, I have the whole thing now that I can share with you, and I'd like to read it. Some of it may be familiar to you. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. And that is a core understanding that can be reached through whatever religion. If we go deeply enough and go beyond words, the words here are pointing to it, suggesting it. But we have to walk it to reach that place. So here's the whole poem. It's called A Great Wagon, and that's an interesting title because Mahayana in Buddhism is called the great vehicle, great being, one that is big enough to include all people. anyone who wants to hop on for a ride and go in the direction of awakening, of liberation, of true liberation, that vehicle is there. And the same as this wagon. When I see your face, the stones start spinning. You appear, all studying wanders. I lose my place. Water turns pearly. Fire dies down and doesn't burn. In your presence, I don't want what I thought I wanted, those 3 little hanging lamps. Inside your face, the ancient manuscripts seem like rusty mirrors. You breathe, new shapes appear, and the music of a desire as widespread as spring begins to move like a great wagon. Drive slowly. Some of us walking alongside are lame. Today, like every other day, we wake up empty and frightened. Don't open the door to the study and begin reading. Take down a musical instrument. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase, each other, doesn't make any sense. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the doorsill where the 2 worlds touch. And that doorsill is at the end of the breath. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. I would love to kiss you. The price of kissing is your life. Now my loving is running toward my life, shouting, what a bargain, let's buy it. Daylight, full of small dancing particles, and the one great turning. Our souls are dancing with you. Without fee, they dance. Can you see them when I whisper in your ear? They try to say what you are, spiritual or sexual. They wonder about Solomon and all his wives. In the body of the world, they say, there is a soul, and you are that. But we have ways within each other that will never be said by anyone. Come to the orchard in spring. There is light and wine and sweethearts in the pomegranate flowers. If you do not come, these do not matter. If you do come, these do not matter. There are many koans in that poem. And as we go more deeply into our practice, extending the out-breath, brought deep by that yearning, the same yearning that the Sufi masters turn to deepen. And gradually you too will find that field beyond right doing and wrongdoing. And when you lie down in that grass, the questions will disappear. There will be no thought of self and other. This is real Zen. I'll read it one more time. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas and language, even the phrase each other, doesn't make any sense. When I see your face, the stones start spinning. You appear all studying wanderers, and I lose my place. Water turns pearly, fire dies down and doesn't destroy. In your presence, I don't want what I thought I wanted, those 3 little hanging lamps. Inside your face, the ancient manuscripts seem like rusty mirrors. You breathe, new shapes appear, and the music of a desire as widespread as spring begins to move like a great wagon, drive slowly. Some of us walk alongside, are lame. Today, like every other day, we wake up empty and frightened. Don't open the door to the study and begin reading and try to avoid that fear. Take down a musical instrument. Let the beauty we love be what we do. Then there are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase, each other, doesn't make any sense. The breeze of dawn, at dawn, has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. Don't fall back into your accustomed habit patterns. When the whole universe is in the palm of your hand. I would love to kiss you. The price of kissing you is your life. Now my loving is running toward my life, shouting, what a bargain, let's buy it. Daylight, full of small dancing particles, and the one great turning. Our souls are dancing with you. Without fee, they dance. Can you see them when I whisper in your ear? They try to say what you are, spiritual or sexual. They wonder about Solomon and all his wives. In the body of the world, they say there is a soul, and you are that. But we have ways within each other that will never be said by anyone. Come to the orchard in spring. There is light and wine and sweethearts in the pomegranate flowers. If you do not come, these do not matter. If you do come, these do not matter. Another way of touching that yearning. Let yourself sink into it. Let yourself die into it. The price of kissing you, the price of opening to that which you yearn for, is to die. To die to that self-image, to die to this assumption about what and who you are, and in that dying to become free, so that who you really are can manifest purely, clearly, without hindrance. And whatever your karma brings you to be in this life, you will be it fully and freely. Once you've crossed that threshold deeply enough to awaken. I thank you for listening, and we'll stop now and recite the four vows. And, of course, we have still another round of sitting.